Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 83, Draupadi meets the queens of Krishna. This chapter relates a conversation between Draupadi and Lord Krishna's foremost queens, in which each of them describes how the Lord married her. Lord Sri Krishna returned from his meeting with the gopis and asked King Yudhisthira and his other relatives whether they were well. They replied, quote, "My lord, anyone who has just once imbibed through his ears the honey of your pastimes can never know misfortune," end quote. Then Draupadi inquired from Lord Krishna's wives how the Lord had come to marry them. Queen Rukmini spoke first, quote, "Many kings headed by Jarasandha were intent on giving me in marriage to Shishupal. Thus at my wedding, they all stood with bows in hand, ready to support Shishupal against any opponents. But Sri Krishna came and forcibly took me away, as a lion takes his prey from amidst goats and sheep," end quote. Queen Satyabhama said, "When my uncle Prashena was killed, my father Satyajit falsely accused Lord Krishna of murder. To clear his name, Krishna defeated Jambavan, recovered the Shamantaka jewel, and returned it to Satyajit. Repentant, my father presented the Lord with both the jewel and myself," end quote. Queen Jambavati said, quote, "When Sri Krishna entered my father's cave in search of the Shamantaka jewel, at first my father Jambavan did not understand who he was, so my father fought with him for 27 days and nights. Finally, Jambavan understood that Krishna was none other than Lord Ramchandra, his worshipable Lord. Thus he gave Krishna the Shamantaka jewel along with me," end quote. Queen Kalindi said, quote, "To obtain Krishna as my husband, I performed severe austerities. Then one day, Lord Krishna came to me in the company of Arjuna, and at that time the Lord agreed to marry me," end quote. Queen Mitravinda said, quote, "Sri Krishna came to my Swayamvar ceremony where he defeated all the opposing kings and took me away to his city of Dwarka," end quote. Queen Satya said, "My father stipulated that to win my hand, a prospective suitor would have to subdue and tie up 7 powerful bulls. Accepting this challenge, Lord Krishna playfully subdued them, defeated all his rival suitors, and married me," end quote. Queen Bhadra said, quote, "My father invited his nephew Krishna, to whom I had already given my heart, and offered me to him as his bride. The dowry was an entire military division and a retinue of my female companions." Queen Lakshmana said to Draupadi, quote, "At my Swayamvar, as at yours, a fish target was fastened near the ceiling, but in my case, the fish was concealed on all sides, and only its reflection could be seen in a pot of water below. Several kings tried to hit the fish with an arrow, but failed. Arjuna then made his attempt. He concentrated on the reflection of the fish in the water and took careful aim, but when he released his arrow, it only grazed the target. Then Shri Krishna fixed his arrow on the bow and shot it straight through the target, knocking it to the ground. I placed the victory necklace on Shri Krishna's neck, but the kings who had failed raised a violent protest. Lord Krishna valiantly fought them, cutting off their heads, arms, and legs, and sending many of the rest fleeing for their lives. Then the Lord took me to Dwarka for our lavish wedding," end quote. Rohini Devi, representing all the other queens, explained that they were the daughters of the kings defeated by Bhaumasura. The demon had held them captive, but when Lord Krishna killed him, he had released them and married them all. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, "Thus, Lord Krishna, the spiritual master of the gopis and the very purpose of their life, showed them his mercy. He then met with Yudhisthira and all his other relatives and inquired from them about their welfare." Purport. The word Guru Gati has been translated here in their usual sense, quote, spiritual master and goal, end quote. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, however, points out an additional meaning. While Lord Krishna is the goal for all sadhus in general, for the gopis specifically, he is that goal which is guru predominant in the sense that of completely eclipsing the significance of all other possible goals. Text 2. Feeling greatly honored, King Yudhisthira and the others, freed of all sinful reactions by seeing the feet of the Lord of the universe, gladly answered his inquiries. Text 3. Lord Krishna's relatives said, O Master, how can misfortune arise for those who have even once freely drunk the nectar coming from your lotus feet? This intoxicating liquor pours into the drinking cups of their ears, having flowed from the minds of great devotees through their mouths. It destroys the embodied soul's forgetfulness of the creator of their bodily existence. Text 4. The radiance of your personal form dispels the threefold effects of material consciousness, and by your grace, we have become immersed in total happiness. Your knowledge is indivisible and unrestricted. By your Yogamaya potency, you have assumed this human form for protecting the Vedas, which had been threatened by time. We bow down to you, the final destination of perfect saints. Purport. Simply by the effulgent light emanating from the beautiful form of Lord Krishna, one's intelligence is purified of all material contamination, and thus the soul's various entanglements in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance are dispelled. Quote, how then, the Lord's relatives imply, can we ever suffer misfortune? We are always immersed in absolute happiness, end quote. This is their answer to his inquiry about their welfare. Text 5. The great sage Shukadev Goswami said, as Yudhisthira and the others were thus praising Lord Krishna, the crest jewel of all sublimely glorified personalities, the women of the Andaka and Kaurava clans met with one another and began discussing topics about Govinda that are sung throughout the three worlds. Please listen as I relate those to you. Text 6 and 7. She, Draupadi, said, O Vaidarbhi, Bhadra, and Jambavati, O Koshala, Satyabhama, and Kalindi, O Shaibya, Rohini, Lakshmana, and other wives of Lord Krishna, please tell me how the Supreme Lord Achyuta, imitating the ways of this world by his mystic power, came to marry each of you. Purport. The Rohini addressed here by Draupadi is not Lord Balaram's mother, but another Rohini, the foremost of the 16,000 princesses Lord Krishna rescued from the prison of Bhaumasura. Draupadi turns to her as the representative of all 16,000 and as a virtual equal to Shri Krishna's 8 chief queens. Text 8. Shri Rukmini said, when all the kings held their bows at the ready to assure that I would be presented to Shishupal, he who puts the dust of his feet on the heads of invincible warriors took me from their midst, as a lion forcibly takes his prey from the midst of goats and sheep. May I always be allowed to worship those feet of Lord Krishna, the abode of Goddess Shri. Purport. Lord Krishna's pastime of kidnapping Rukmini is narrated in detail in chapters 52 through 54 of the Srimad-Bhagavatam's 10th canto. Text 9. Shri Satyabhama said, my father, his heart tormented by his brother's death, accused Krishna of killing him. To remove the stain on his reputation, the Lord defeated the king of the bears and took back the Shamantaka jewel, which he then returned to my father. Fearing the consequences of his offense, my father offered me to the Lord, even though I had already been promised to others. Purport. As described in chapter 56 of this canto, King Satyajit had already compromised himself by promising his daughter's hand first to Akrura and then again to a number of other suitors. But after the return of Shamantakajul, he felt impelled by his shame to offer her to Lord Krishna instead. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word prabhave, quote, unto the Lord, end quote, answers any doubt as to the propriety of offering Krishna a bride who had already been promised to others. It is perfectly proper to offer him everything one owns and improper to withhold anything from him. Text 10. Shri Jambavati said, unaware that Lord Krishna was none other than his own master and worshipable deity, the husband of goddess Sita, my father fought with him for 27 days. When my father finally came to his senses and recognized the Lord, he took hold of his feet and presented him with both me and the Shamantaka jewel as tokens of his reverence. I am simply the Lord's maidservant. Purport. Jambavan had been Lord Ramchandra's servant many thousands of years before. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti mentions that while hearing Jambavati's story, the women present recognized her as the girl whom Jambavan had once offered to Lord Shri Ram to be his wife. Since Lord Ram had taken a vow to have only one wife, he could not accept her, but did so when he returned in the Dwapara Yuga as Krishna. The other queens wanted to honor Jambavati for this, but she replied humbly, quote, I am just the Lord's maidservant, end quote. How Jambavati and Satyabhama became Lord Krishna's wives is told in the chapter 56 of the 10th canto. Text 11. Shri Kalindi said, the Lord knew I was performing severe austerities and penances with the hope of one day touching his lotus feet. So he came to me in the company of his friend and took my hand in marriage. Now I'm engaged as a sweeper in his palace. Text 12. Shri Mitravinda said, at my Swayamvara ceremony he came forward, defeating all the kings present, including my brothers, who dared insult him, and took me away just as a lion removes his prey from amidst a pack of dogs. Thus, Lord Krishna, the shelter of the goddess of fortune, brought me to his capital city. May I be allowed to serve him by washing his feet, life after life. Text 13 and 14. Sri Satya said, my father arranged for 7 extremely powerful and vigorous bulls with deadly sharp horns to test the prowess of the kings who desired my hand in marriage. Although these bulls destroyed the false pride of many heroes, Lord Krishna subdued them effortlessly, tying them up in the same way that children playfully tie up a goat's kids. Thus he purchased me with his valor. Then he took me away with my maidservants and a full army of 4 divisions, defeating all the kings who opposed him along the road. May I be granted the privilege of serving that Lord. Text 15 and 16. Shri Bhadra said, my dear Draupadi, of his own free will, my father invited his nephew Krishna, to whom I had already dedicated my heart, and offered me to him as his bride. My father presented me to the Lord with an Akshahini military guard and a retinue of my female companions. My ultimate perfection is this, to always be allowed to touch Sri Krishna's lotus feet as I wander from life to life, bound by my karma. Purport. With the word Atmana, Queen Bhadra speaks not only for herself, but for all living entities as well. The soul's perfection, Shreya Atmana, is devotional service to Lord Krishna, both in this world and beyond in liberation. Srila Jiva Goswami comments that although in civilized society it's normally considered disrespectful to publicly speak the name of one's guru or husband, Lord Krishna's name is unique. The mere utterance of the name Krishna is commendable as the highest expression of reverence for God. in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 419 states, Yasya Nama Mahadmyasha, quote, the holy name of the Lord is supremely glorious, end quote. Text 17. Sri Lakshmana said, O Queen, I repeatedly heard Narada Muni glorify the appearances and activities of Achyuta, and thus my heart also became attached to that Lord, Mukunda. Indeed, even goddess Padmahashta chose him as her husband after careful consideration, rejecting the great demigods who rule various planets. Text 18. My father, Brihatsane, who was by nature compassionate to his daughter, and knowing how I felt, O saintly lady, he arranged to fulfill my desire. Text 19. Just as a fish was used as a target in your Swayamvar ceremony, O Queen, to assure that you would obtain Arjuna as your husband, so a fish was also used in my ceremony. In my case, however, it was concealed on all sides, and only its reflection could be seen in a pot of water below. Purport. Arjuna is famous as the most expert bowman. Why then could he not hit the fish target at Srimati Lakshmana's Swayamvar ceremony, just as he had done once before to win Draupadi? Srila Sridhar Swami explains, the target on at Draupadi's Swayamvar had been covered only partially so that a marksman could see it if he looked straight up at the pillar on which it was placed. To shoot Lakshmana's target, however, it was necessary to aim by looking up and down at the same time, an impossible feat for any mortal. Therefore, only Krishna could strike the target. Text 20. Hearing of this, thousands of kings, expert in shooting arrows and wielding other weapons, converged from all directions on my father's city, accompanied by their military teachers. Text 21. My father properly honored each king according to his strength and seniority. Then those whose minds were fixed on me took up the bow and arrow, and one by one tried to pierce the target in the midst of the assembly. Purport. According to the Acharyas, only those kings who were extremely intent on winning the hand of the princess even dared to try to shoot the target. Text 22. Some of them picked up the bow, but could not string it, so they threw it aside in frustration. Some managed to pull the bowstring toward the tip of the bow, only to have the bow spring back and knock them to the ground. Text 23. A few heroes, namely Jarasandha, Shishupal, Bhima, Duryodhana, Karna, and the king of Ambashta, succeeded in stringing the bow, but none of them could find the target. Purport. These kings were very strong physically, but they were not skillful enough to find a target. Text 24. Then Arjuna looked at the reflection of the fish in the water and determined its position. When he carefully shot his arrow at it, however, he did not pierce the target, but merely grazed it. Purport. According to the explanation of Srila Sridhar Swami, Arjuna was more expert a marksman than the other kings, but his physical strength was not adequate to the task of shooting it with perfect accuracy. Text 25 and 26. After all the arrogant kings had given up, their pride broken, the Supreme Personality of Godhead picked up the bow, easily strung it, and fixed his arrow upon it. As the sun stood in the constellation Abhijit, he looked at the fish in the water only once, and then pierced it with the arrow, knocking it to the ground. Purport. Each day the sun passes once through the lunar constellation Abhijit, marking the period most auspicious for victory. As pointed out by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, on this particular day, the Muhurta of Abhijit coincided with high noon, further emphasizing Lord Krishna's greatness by making the target all the more difficult to see. Text 27. Kettle drums resounded in the sky, and on the earth people shouted, Jai, Jai, end quote. Overjoyed, demigods showered flowers. Text 28. Just then I walked onto the ceremonial ground, the ankle bells on my feet gently tinkling. I was wearing new garments of the finest silk, tied with a belt, and I carried a brilliant necklace fashioned of gold and jewels. There was a shy smile on my face and a wreath of flowers in my hair. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami states that Lakshmana was so excited by remembering how she obtained the Supreme Lord that she forgot her natural shyness and went on to describe her own triumph. Text 29. I lifted my face, which was encircled by my abundant locks and effulgent from the glow of my earrings reflected from my cheeks. Smiling coolly, I glanced about. Then, looking around at all the kings, I slowly placed the necklace on the shoulder of Murari, who had captured my heart. Text 30. Just then, there were loud sounds of conch shells and mridanga, pataha, beri, and anaka drums, as well as other instruments. Men and women began to dance, and singers began to sing. Text 31. The leading kings could not tolerate my having chosen the Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Draupadi. Burning with lust, they became quarrelsome. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami comments that the contamination of lust led the kings to quarrel foolishly with the Lord even after seeing his supreme power. Text 32. The Lord then placed me on his chariot drawn by 4 most excellent horses. Donning his armor and readying his bow, Sharinga, he stood on the chariot, and there on the battleground he manifested his 4 arms. Purport. With 2 of his 4 arms, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Lord Krishna embraced his bride, and with the other 2 he held his bow and arrows. Text 33. Daruka drove the Lord's gold-trimmed chariot as the kings looked on, O Queen, like small animals, helplessly watching a lion. Text 34. The kings pursued the Lord like a village dog chases a lion. Some kings, raising their bows, stationed themselves on the road to stop him as he passed by. Text 35. These warriors were deluged by arrows shot from the Lord's bow, Sharinga. Some of the kings fell on the battlefield with severed arms, legs, and necks. The rest gave up the fight and fled. Text 36. The Lord of the Yadus then entered his capital city, Kushastali, Dwarka, which is glorified in heaven and on earth. The city was elaborately decorated with flagpoles carrying banners that blocked the sun, and also with splendid archways. As Lord Krishna entered, he appeared like the sun god entering his abode. Purport. The abode of the sun is in the western mountains, where he sets each evening. Text 37. My father honored his friends, family, and in-laws with priceless clothing and jewels, with royal beds, thrones, and other furnishings. Text 38. With devotion, he presented the perfectly complete Lord with a number of maidservants bedecked with precious ornaments. Accompanying these maidservants were guards walking on foot and others riding elephants, chariots, and horses. He also gave the Lord extremely valuable weapons. Purport. The Supreme Lord is Purna, complete and perfect in himself. He requires nothing for his satisfaction. Knowing this, a pure devotee makes offerings to the Lord only out of love, bhaktita, with no expectation of material profit. And on his part, the Lord happily accepts even a small gift of flour, tulsi leaves, and water when it has been offered with love. Text 39. Thus, by renouncing all material association and practicing severe, austere penances, we queens have all become personal maidservants of the self-satisfied Supreme Lord. Purport. In the opinion of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Srimati Lakshmana became embarrassed when she realized that she had been talking about herself, so she spoke this verse praising her co-wives. In her humility, Lakshmana claimed that Krishna's queens, unlike ordinary wives, could not bring their husband under control, and thus they could relate to him only as servile housekeepers, In fact, however, since the Lord's queens are direct expansions of his internal pleasure potency, Hladini Shakti, they fully controlled him with their love. Text 40. Rohini Devi, speaking for the other queens, said, "After killing Bhaumasura and his followers, the Lord found us in the demon's prison and could understand that we were the daughters of the kings whom Bhoma had defeated during his conquest of the earth. The Lord set us free, and because we had been constantly meditating upon his lotus feet, the source of liberation from material entanglement, he agreed to marry us, though his every desire is already fulfilled." Purport. Rohini Devi was one of the 9 queens mentioned by Draupadi in texts 6 and 7, and thus it is assumed that she speaks here representing the 16,099 other queens. Srila Prabhupada confirms this in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, text 41 and 42. "O saintly lady, we do not desire dominion over the earth, the sovereignty of the King of Heaven, unlimited facility for enjoyment, mystic power, the position of Lord Brahma, immortality, or even attainment of the kingdom of God. We simply desire to carry on our heads the glorious dust of Lord Krishna's feet, enriched by the fragrance of kumkum from his consort's bosom." Purport. The verb Raj means, quote, "to rule," end quote, and from it are derived the words Samrajyam, meaning, quote, "rulership over the entire earth," end quote, and Swarajyam, meaning, quote, "rulership over heaven," end quote. Bhojyam comes from the verb bhuj, quote, "to enjoy," end quote, and thus refers to the capacity of enjoying whatever one desires. Virat is explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti as representing the phrase Vividam Virajate, quote, "one who enjoys many kinds of opulence," end quote, and specifically indicating the 8 mystic perfections of Anima, and so on. An alternative explanation of these terms is given by Srila Sridhar Swami, who says that according to the Bhavricha Brahmana, these four terms designate the power of sovereignty over each of the 4 cardinal directions. Samrajaya for the east, Bhojya for the south, Swarajya for the west, and Vairajya for the north. The Lord Krishna's queens clearly state that they do not desire any of these powers, or even the position of Brahma, liberation, or entrance into the kingdom of God. They simply want the dust of Shri Krishna's feet, which goddess Sita, Shri, worships herself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti tells us that the goddess of fortune mentioned here is not Lakshmi, the consort of Narayan. After all, the Acharya explains, Goddess Lakshmi could not attain the direct association of Krishna even after performing extended austerities, as Uddhava states, Nayam Shio Gna U Nitanta Rate Prashada. Srimad-Bhagavatam 10:47-60. Rather, the Shri referred to here is the supreme goddess of fortune identified in the Brihad Gautamiya Tantra. Devi Krishna Mai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Maye Sarva Kanti Samohina Para. Quote, the transcendental goddess, Srimati Radharani, is the direct counterpart of Lord Shri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses the all-attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord, end quote. Text 43. We desire the same contact with the Supreme Lord's feet that the young women of Raja, the cowherd boys, and even the Aborigine Pulinda women desire. The touch of the dust he leaves on the plants and grass as he tends his cows. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti reminds us of the jealous rivalry that always existed between the queens of Dwarka and the gopis of Raja. The gopis considered the sophisticated women of Dwarka the most serious threat to their hold on Sri Krishna, confessing their anxiety to Uddhava. Kasmat Krishna ihayati prapta rajyo hata hita narendra kanya Uddhavaya. Quote, why should Krishna come back here after winning a kingdom, killing his enemies, and marrying the daughters of kings? End quote. Srimad-Bhagavatam 10:47-45. Rukmini and her 7 chief co-wives considered themselves so fortunate in their relationship with Krishna as he appeared in Dwarka that they did not especially desire to see him as he is in Vrindavan. But the 16,000 lesser queens, after hearing Uddhava describe Shri Radha's super excellent qualities, became attracted to touch the dust that falls from Krishna's feet onto the grass and plants of Vrindavan. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti indicates that some commentators give this as the reason why, after the Moshola Leela, these 16,000 queens were stolen from Arjuna on the road by Krishna himself in the disguise of 16,000 cowherds, who then took them away to Gokul. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad, to the 10th canto, 83rd chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Draupadi Meets the Queens of Krishna.